This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. I'm Graham Stanley, and this is the Twilight Show on Saturday, the 13th of July. And today I'm talking to teacher educator Paula Rebellero about the benefits of becoming involved in teacher research, in particular exploratory action research, a way of empowering teachers that Paula has been very much involved in.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
So thanks for joining me, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, my special guest today is Paula Rebellero. Now, Paula is a teacher educator who has taught at primary, secondary, undergraduate and postgraduate levels, and she's given workshops, seminars and plenary talks in various countries. She has expertise in educational policy, professional development, teacher education and teacher research. And Paula has led initiatives and participated as an advisor in programs around the world that seek to empower teachers with research skills. She is co-author of the Handbook for Exploratory Action Research and has edited several collections of teacher research. Now, I first met Paula some years ago because we were involved in the Americas in the Champion Teachers Project, which she co-led, and she talks a little bit about that later in the show, I think. And I'm very excited. I was very excited catching up with Paula and hearing about all of the initiatives that she's involved in, and also delving much deeper into exploratory action research, which I think is a wonderful way of empowering teachers and really trying to do something that links teachers with research, practice with research. And you can hear my chat with Paula after the Teachers Talk Radio News.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
In higher education news, the BBC reports on the 5,000 students who have brought claims against University College London over the quality of teaching provided during the pandemic. The news website reports that the trial will move to the start of 2026. And will likely be the first, although current and former students from other universities are also seeking compensation. The lead claimant against UCL began his campaign for compensation while still a student, studying for a master's between 2020 and 2021. He told the BBC he paid £14,000 for his international politics degree, which ended up being solely online. He is suing UCL because he says he did not get what he paid for. Test cases will be identified in November, although lawyers representing the students said they would welcome sensible settlement proposals from UCL so that this matter does not proceed to trial. A spokesperson for UCL said the university had prioritised health and safety of the community and followed UK government guidance throughout the pandemic. The Standard covers Eton's plans to ban smartphones for the next academic year. From September, the school will issue boys with a phone that can only be used to make calls and send texts. Eton follows several other private schools who have made similar decisions and are urging parents to only buy smartphones if absolutely necessary. The Eton rules apply to pupils who are aged 13 and in their first year at the school. A letter sent to parents of new boarders said that any smartphone should be taken home after its SIM card was transferred to the school-issued simple handset. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says he's not in favour of simply banning phones for under 16s. In May, a committee of MPs said the new government should consider a ban within its first year because of what it called serious dangers posed to children. The PM said there was a serious question to be asked about what content children can access and how it could be controlled, but that a ban wasn't a practical way forward. Sir Keir was speaking on ITV's Good Morning Britain and said he would sit down with anyone to look at how to put better protections in place. He avoided questions about his own children's use of smartphones, saying he wanted to keep them out of political discussions of any kind. BBC News reports on a review commissioned by Reading Borough Council following the death of head teacher Ruth Perry. The review criticised a culture of high-stakes accountability that led to the public condemnation of individuals. The review included conversations with Mrs Perry's colleagues and governors at the primary school she led, as well as the head teachers and council officers in the local area. There were also meetings with the family of Mrs Perry. The review concluded that what happened to Mrs Perry showed the folly of the macho culture of high-stakes accountability. It also recommends the local authority support calls for Ofsted to scrap its one-word judgments. Mrs Perry's sister, Professor Julie Waters, said she welcomed the call for the council to join the campaign, but said the review goes very lightly on the local authority. Ofsted will publish a review later this summer. Finally, Ireland's RTE focuses on Queen's University Belfast's recognition of the support role pets play in educational attainment. 25 animals took part in a special graduation ceremony following the main summer graduations. Queen said the gesture is based on research that shows the important degree of support animals can provide as study buddies. Dogs, cats, and a hamster took to the red carpet for the informal ceremony, with plenty of puns in the awards, which included a dogterate and a catificate. The university said research has shown that time spent with pets can improve concentration levels and lower stress, two things that are important when studying. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. And today my special guest is Paula Rebolledo. Paula, how are you?
Hello, Graham. Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Oh, thank you very much for agreeing to do this and finding the time. I know you're a very busy person.
No, not really busy as in super busy. It's just that Saturdays are busy times for me, but we have managed to work out an alternative, so all good.
Great. So what have you been up to recently, Paula? What kind of projects have you been doing or things that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I've been working on more mentoring exploratory action research. So I've been doing that for many years now, and I love it. I just never get sick of it or tired of it. So I've been doing that for a project for British Council Georgia. So I started working with them a couple of years ago. So I keep working on that.
That sounds fantastic. And I'll definitely ask you more about exploratory action research in a little while. But first, what I'd love to hear from you is how you became involved in education. What was it that led you to becoming a teacher, being interested in English, and then teacher training, development, research? Anything you'd like to share about that?
It's interesting question because it kind of happened by accident. I kind of fell in love with English as a foreign language very early on in my life. That's because of my father. He loves music in English, so he would always be playing music around the house in English. And since I was very little, and I just developed this ear for listening to English, and I was able to pronounce it and produce the language very well. And then as I got older in high school, I just had a kind of a natural talent for it. And then when I decided what I was going to study, I really wanted to study something in connection with English. And when I chose to become an English teacher, I wasn't really thinking about teaching. I was just thinking, I want to learn English. And my family wasn't very happy, to be honest, because again, unfortunately, as you know, in many parts of the world, to be a teacher is not a very well-respected profession. And so my mom would think that I had the brains to do something else. And and I said, well, I think all of the brains are needed for people teaching, working in teaching in education. But at that time, I wasn't really thinking about education per se.
Right.
But I really, really wanted to do that. So I couldn't have chosen anything else. I was really obsessed with studying English. And then when I studied the program, which is a 5-year program, I just realized that every time we had like very micro teaching practices, it was very made me feel energized or reinvigorated or something. There was a lot of motivational factors there that kept me going. And then just when I graduated, I realized, I actually do like teaching. I do like education. And the more I studied, I became more in love of it. But it's just through English. The funny thing is that once they asked me, what were the first words you spoke in English? And I remember it vividly.
Really?
Yeah, I was about 4 years old. And the reason why I remember is because my dad was watching this festival that is very well known in Chile. And they were singing and dancing, and I really liked the music. So I asked them, what are they? What are they called? And my dad said, Casey and the Sunshine Band. And I was like, what? Come again? Casey and the Sun. And I repeated until I said it perfectly. And my dad was like, yeah, you said it well. And then I remember that those sounds. I didn't know what those sounds meant. But then
Yeah.
Casey and the Sunshine Band, I remember repeating those sounds for years to come until I realized, oh, it's actually the name of a band. So those were my first words ever in English at the age of 4.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Mhm.
And are you still listening to Casey and the Sunshine Band?
Oh, absolutely. And Earth, Wind, and Fire. Funnily enough, about 6 years ago, they came to Chile. They did a concert in Chile, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Casey. And I bought tickets and I gave it to my dad as a birthday present. He didn't know.
Oh,
I just gave him an
fantastic.
envelope, like an envelope, and just open it. And there were the tickets to see them. And he just started crying. It was so emotional. We went to see it together. Oh, it was just great.
That's amazing. And Paula, then after you graduated and became a teacher, what kind of teaching did you fall into? Did you try lots of different types, or did you go straight into university, for example?
Yeah, that's interesting. So as soon as I actually before I graduated, when I was in year 3, this is when I realized that I like teaching because I got a job at a language school.
Mm,
I don't think I, I don't think I knew that much, but probably my English was enough to teach basic students. And so I work at this language school. And the great thing about working at a language school is that they keep telling you that it's all about communication, that you only need to speak English, that you need to talk to them as much as possible and just kind of play with the language a little bit and making fun. And so I kind of learned to teach that way because that's the way I I I started working in the profession. So and that became my first job. And so by the time I decided to go and work at a school, because at some moment I made the decision, I don't want to work in a language school anymore with 8 students. I just want to face a real classroom.
right.
And I just decided to go ahead and try it. And when I tried it, I realized my way of teaching was kind of different, difficult to apply, exhausting, because trying to speak all the time to a group of about 40 students, because there were 40 to 42 students in the classroom. It was exhausting, but it was very rewarding. I felt like I was achieving something. And that's when the principal of the school asked me to become head of the program to try to make sure that a style of teaching would be implemented throughout the school. And that's how my whole kind of the story of development started.
That's really interesting. So when you were teaching in the language school, were you teaching a range of different age groups and levels?
I was teaching mainly basic students and pre-intermediate students, adults. And then I had a group of students that were children. So let's say from the age of 5 to the age of like 11. Um, and they were all in basic level and it was all pure communication. So you need to be talking to them in English and just like a kind of really the communicative approach, which is not easy, but it's easier when you have 10 people in a classroom, 8 people in a classroom. So trying to implement that kind of method in a school classroom setting is hard, but I was just like determined to try it. And I
Wow.
kind of did.
Yeah. And when you moved to the school, you were teaching at secondary level, were you?
Yeah, I mean, they gave me, that is interesting about schools. Depending on the number of hours that school has, they can give you a number of hours in different levels. So at the time when I first started at the school, they give me the younger kids, so first grade, second grade, third grade. But then they also gave me older kids like 12, 13, also teenagers. So lucky or not, because it's difficult as well, I had to teach all levels and all different ages while I was working at the school. Also because I was head of program and I needed to like substitute teachers, cover for them. So I ended up teaching all levels, all ages.
Wow. Yeah. It's kind of similar to what I did. I started off in a language school. I was teaching adults, business students, then moved to teaching young learners, primary and secondary in the language school context, and then ended up I remember teaching catering students, a class of 40 basic English to catering students, class of 40 students who didn't have any desire to learn English. They were there just to become waiters or chefs, basically. And it was the most challenging thing I'd ever started doing, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, when you I've noticed that when you need to kind of think out of the box and just come up with something different and face a challenge, it's a lot more rewarding. And that's what I felt when I went to school and I had this challenge of teaching 45 kids and all shouting at the same time. It was hard, but it was so much fun. I remember enjoying it, but I do remember also at the end of the day being exhausted.
Yeah.
I don't know if it happened to you, but in our case, when you're teaching, you go from one classroom to another, at least as
Yeah.
a school system in Chile, and you just never sit down. If you sit down, kids can kill themselves. So you need to be always moving and circulating around the room, which is probably why I didn't have to do much exercise. That was kind of my everyday exercise, really.
Yeah, the two. I think it's something that people who aren't teachers don't understand just how tiring, exhausting. It's all of the energy, the kind of
Oh,
attention that you have to put upon making sure that everyone is engaged, the walking around, but also the kind of mental attention of you're always on the lookout to kind of make sure that everyone is behaving, if they're kids, for example, and you've got their attention, that you're know what you're going to do next. It's very, very exhausting.
yeah. Once I remember I saw somebody mentioning like if we create like thought bubbles of what
Mm,
goes on in your head simultaneously when you're teaching a class, there is so much going on. It's like, oh, I need to do this activity. Oh, I didn't correct that error. I should have corrected it before. I'm going to give him feedback later. And then you're thinking, I only have about 5 more minutes to finish this part of the lesson. And oh, but I'm getting hungry and I want to grab something to eat as soon as there is so many things that you are happening that are going on in your head, not only about the class, but what is coming later and trying to take care of your well-being as well. Am I tired? Do I need to lay down? Do I need to drink water? Um, it's
yeah.
so much going on in your head when you're teaching a big class, especially also when there is one after another. There's hardly any time for you to take a break and just kind of get yourself together. You finish and then you
Yeah.
go to another class and you go to another class. It's just, I don't think people understand it. My boyfriend is he does public speaking and
Mhm.
he says, "Oh, today I was speaking for 3 hours and I'm exhausted." I'm exhausted. And I'm like, well, imagine that for about 6 hours in a row with big
Yeah.
audience all the time. That's what a teacher does every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. I think your senses are also heightened. You're particularly focused on trying to hear um, what people are saying, in particular when you're a language teacher, trying to pick up on the language, trying to process it, keep it in the back of the mind. All right, I need to address this later, the errors that I'm hearing, etc. Taking notes, watching to make sure that the students are safe and stuff like that. There's so much going on. I agree with you.
Yeah, but that's what makes it fun anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what keeps you so
It's never
energized.
boring. There's
Yeah.
so much, and there's so much you can learn about it. There's so much you can become better just by doing it and focusing on it. And then every class is different, every student is different, so they all need different strategies, etc. Which brings me to teacher
Mhm.
development. How long was it before you started becoming involved in teacher development, Paula?
Well, it was exactly at that job because I became head of the department, and
Mm,
the principal of the school, in a way, wanted me to kind of explain how I did this. I did things to teachers, and I just kind of felt uncomfortable about coming to the school and just tell them this is the way you have to do it. I felt that
mm,
wasn't the right approach. So we started talking about different strategies. We started sharing ideas, ways of doing things. And then I remember that my first like big moment for me to do teacher training in a way was when I went to the IATEFL Chile conference. That was a long time ago, but I was just blown away by some of the things that I saw. There's some ideas. So I came to school and I kind of I prepared like a mix, like a 2-hour workshop presentation with different ideas that I thought would be potentially interesting for the teachers at school based on our reality. And that was the first time I did a workshop session, let's say. And it went very well. They liked it. Of course, the ideas were not mine, but the delivery was mine, the how to do it, the how to mix them up. And I felt such joy in sharing with teachers, and they looked so, through me, kind of felt so energized and so reinvigorated and so motivated of learning new things that I thought there was something there that I enjoyed. And the fact that they were able to voice how they were going to use those things, unlike kids, that kids or students, they can tell you that they are learning. But when you're teaching a teacher, the teacher immediately is going to tell you, okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to tell you tomorrow how it went. That immediate kind of feedback and sensation of impact, I really, really enjoyed.
Right, excellent. And then the next piece of the puzzle I'd like to know more about is research. What got you interested in research, and in particular teacher research?
Well, that's also kind of throughout my career. So I went to do a master's degree, right, to the
Yeah.
UK. So in the UK, of course, you need to do research, and I came back and they asked me to teach a module on action research at for a group of teachers. This was a professional development course for teachers at university. And I
And
was supposed
had you at that time done any action research yourself?
Yeah, I had done it at university before. So
Mhm.
I knew about it. I knew the theory and I had done the practice. So I explained a little bit what I had done, but I also explained the theory. I remember I studied a lot and I prepared myself a lot for teaching that module. But when I did it, I kind of felt there were mixed messages from teachers. Some of them liked it, some of them didn't. Some of them didn't see the point in it. Some of them did. And some of them did in a different way than what I suspected. I still remember a teacher telling me, okay, I did it. I didn't discover anything new, but I really like that even though this is not something new for me, I was able to do the process myself. Like nobody told me, like I was able to get data myself, kind of get answers for some of my questions. And so this feeling of, in a way, empowerment, but not everybody got it. And so I just became very curious about what was the whole purpose of doing that if teachers were not buying into it. And so when I went to do my PhD, that's what I did. I decided to study the impact, if there was any impact, on a group of teachers doing a module on action research.
Wonderful. At this point, Paola, I'm sure that most, if not all, our listeners understand what action research is, but just in case they don't, let's kind of make it very clear. It's, as I understand it, it's basically when a teacher looks at something that is happening in their classroom or with their with their teaching practice, and tries to research into how to make it better. Would that be a fair description of it, or would you like to elaborate on it?
Yes, and when the things get complicated, it's when sometimes, and I don't think it's wrong, but sometimes action research are considered to be the same thing as teacher research. Teacher research, you need to think as a big umbrella term. So there are many things that could fall into the category of teacher research. Action research is one way of doing teacher research. So teacher research is teachers doing research in their classrooms for the sake of learning about their teaching, also helping their students, but the focus is on the teacher doing it. Action research is one way of doing it, but they are not synonyms. So in the case of action research, what you do is you start immediately with a reflection about your practice, an immediate intervention. So an action, an intervention and a strategy, you implement it, and then you evaluate it to see what happened, whether it helped, whether it didn't, in what way. So that is why it's action research, because it's based on an intervention. And it didn't derive from education. Action research derived from the labor, from the world of industries, as
really?
a way, as a way to help workers improve their work, improve their performance, and for them to have some say in their work. That is where it originated. And then, of course, it was taken by different areas, the health, and education later, and as a way for practitioners to try to solve problems in their practice by themselves, so to try to understand what they do. So that is what these courses were trying to do, in a way to help teachers become, and this is what always appeared in every document that I read, to become agents of change. That seemed to be the main purpose.
And so teacher research includes, it's an umbrella term that includes action research and any other research that teachers do, presumably. Is that the case? Like even, reading about teaching and language, etc. in the case of language teachers. Is that right?
They can do like a literature review, for example. Maybe there is nothing, there is no intervention happening in the classroom, but if it involves collecting data from the literature and that answering questions that they have, do an analysis, as long as it involves the collection and the analysis of data, and with finding answers for their questions, all of that involves research. So it could be something like that. It could be exploratory practice. It could be lesson study. There are different forms of research that teachers do that could be considered teacher research. What is important to understand is that there are different ways of doing it, and action research is not the only one. Teachers can choose the one based on which one they feel most comfortable with.
Okay. And when you did your PhD, was that when you developed a kind of a different approach to doing action research? Because you're very much connected to this idea of exploratory action research, and you mentioned exploratory practice just before. Was that where this idea developed, or was it later?
No, it's just when I finished the PhD, I finished the PhD with a very critical view of teacher research in general. So, meaning it cannot be forced on teachers. It needs to be an invitation for them to see this as a way of them developing research skills, critical thinking, but as an invitation rather than being forced, which sometimes happens. Also, what happens a lot is that many people that teach teachers how to do teacher research have not done it themselves. So they may not fully understand what it looks like in practice. Also, sometimes teachers, when they are invited to do this, they're not supported. The teachers that I studied, particularly when I did my research, were really not supported. And it made it seem like they were even... the whole thing failed, but it was supposed to fail considering the little support they had, and they didn't know what they were doing. So I developed a certain criticism towards a very academic, top-down view of the process. Action research is supposed to be bottom-up, right? It's supposed to help teachers make their own decisions. And if this is being forced on them, if it's imposed with ways of thinking that teachers do not understand, then is when it fails. So when exploratory action research developed in a program in which Richard Smith was invited to do a program about action research, and Richard believed that a prior exploration was a lot more valuable than immediately jumping into action. And so, because I had just finished my PhD, we met in Santiago because I had the local knowledge in a way. So in conversation, he had this idea about doing the exploration, and I had this idea about making the process very, very practical, very jargon-free. And he also had this idea of being mentored by others in the process. I had the idea of being mentored by peers who had done it before. So in a way, both our ideas that came from different places but were so similar kind of ended up being the implementation of the Champion Teachers Project in Chile that originated exploratory action research.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalized social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Could you delve a little bit deeper into this idea of exploratory? What is it about exploratory practice you think it's important for teachers to look into?
Yeah, well, what usually happens is, and this is something that I also noticed at the very beginning when I started working with teachers on research, is that we teachers need to always solve problems and solve them quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a situation in their classroom. We notice our students are not paying attention. We need to find a solution. One student is hitting another. We need to find a solution. So we have been trained to solve problems quickly on the spot, right there and then. But the situation is that we are over applying that problem solving skill that we've developed to everything, or maybe too much, and we, in a way that is preventing us from thinking more deeply and reflecting about what is actually happening. What is the source of the problem? What are all the factors that are at play? So in action research, what happens is you immediately implement an action or you see something in a book, or somebody tells you an idea and you implement it and you want to see whether it works or not. The problem of that, even though it's research and it's valuable and all of that, the problem is that it prevents you from understanding what was the origin of the situation in the first place. What is it that is happening that you're implementing this strategy? And maybe the strategy you're implementing is not really related to what is originating the situation.
So the difference is action research, you can take external ideas and bring them into the classroom and see what kind of changes or improvements are made. Whereas exploratory action research always starts with the practice of the teacher and the learners and the teaching in someone's actual context and classroom.
Yeah, so it comes from within. Once you are in the classroom collecting evidence from your students, talking to a colleague who observes your classroom, you get to understand what is actually happening in my classroom, what is the current situation. And then based on that situation, whatever it is that you learn, not only a problem, you may learn about something you do very well that you want to develop further or you want to expand on. Based on all that understanding, all that new knowledge about this situation, you implement an action plan to expand something that was working or to change something that needs changing. Or maybe there is nothing to be changed at all and you just stay with the data that you collected during the exploration phase. But if you want to continue and make a change, you go ahead and do that. But unlike action research, there was all this reflection happening before with an entire process of data collection before you evaluate the change or the action. So you, in a way, you learn a lot about yourself, about your practice, about your students before you implement anything else.
Right.
And that is what is key, because it kind of helps you to slow down a little. And when something is urgent or important and you need to solve it right there and then quickly, you do that. But if there's a situation that is really happening in your classroom constantly and it requires you to pay more attention, this is a strategy that can help you do that. Collect data, analyze the information, see what is really going on, and then implement changes that you can later evaluate. And that's what exploratory action research proposes.
Wonderful. That's very, very clear, I think. And how do teachers get involved in this, Paula? What do you recommend if someone is out there listening now thinking, I would like to try that? Where should they start?
Yeah, so interestingly, there are many institutions that are running it or they are supporting it locally in various countries. There are mentors that are in different parts of the world that are trying to find people to mentor. But if you have this need to do something like that and you want some initial information, of course, I would advise them to go and look at the handbook for exploratory action research. That is an open resource at the British Council website. I think it's at Teaching English, so it's downloadable for free. You read a little bit more about it then. And if you want to receive the mentoring, you can do it by yourself just by following the guidelines of the handbook. And if you feel that you would like to receive support from a group of mentors, there are mentors that are part of a network that is called Mentoring Teacher Research. And they voluntarily mentor teachers sometimes that are interested in doing that. So there is always support available. There are many Facebook groups to do that. But if you are just interested to do it by yourself and give it a try, the handbook provides enough support for that.
And what are the benefits of getting a mentor to help you with this exploratory action research?
From my experience, is huge. In fact, I would just recommend it to everybody. If possible, please try to find a mentor. It's just somebody that has done it before. It's like two teachers, one who has never taught before and another one that has taught many times. You know that they tell you, be careful with this, move around the classroom, try always to nominate the students because otherwise you're not going to be participating. The same kind of thing happens in this. So just be careful with your data, record everything. Just make sure that when you do a classroom observation, do more than one. One is not going to be enough to give you enough information about what is happening. Things like that, that only somebody that has done it before might tell you. So it doesn't have to be a researcher. Another teacher that has done it will already have a lot of knowledge about the process, what to do, what not to do, what kind of things to pay attention to, and also the critical dialogue that happens when you're talking to another partner doing that. So especially when you're coming up with your questions, like I have this idea and these are the questions that I want to propose to do this, and that person can tell you, yeah, but maybe you need to look at it from this angle. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? That dialogue between colleagues is also really important. And you see the importance through different stages. So when you're coming up with the questions, but also when you are designing your data collection tools. So you have a questionnaire, and then you need somebody to act as a critical peer and check the questionnaire. And then, oh no, but I realized that here I'm asking this question twice, or this question is not entirely clear. So having that dialogue with somebody is always helpful.
Right. And so teachers could get involved with this mentoring scheme and have an online mentor, but they could also try to start up a scheme, an exploratory action research program themselves in their own school, for example, and mentor each other, couldn't they?
Yeah, it's interesting, but it's so widespread now that I assure you that a teacher, we've developed the program in Mexico, in Peru, in Chile, in Argentina, done by a group of professionals, and then in Uruguay. But then it's been widespread. Oh, we did it in Colombia too. So in all these countries, if we think about Latin America, there's people doing it, but also there are examples of that in India, in Indonesia, in Thailand. I've been doing some of that in Europe as well. So in different countries, there is somebody that has done exploratory action research already.
Yeah.
And so believe it or not, even though they may not be well-established researchers, if you want to call them, but they can already be in a position to give you support.
Yeah. So it is definitely worthwhile teachers reaching out and seeing who is available and to help mentor.
Yeah. That's worth a try.
So Paula, in your experience of the many years of doing this with teachers, are there trends with English language teachers, for example, of the kinds of problems that come up? Are they kind of popular trends? Is it all about trying to get teenagers to speak, for example? Is there anything you can identify as being particularly common areas where teachers want to explore how to improve their practice in their classrooms?
Yeah, that's precisely that. You've said it. Well, I know that you've been in contact with teachers and you talk to them a lot simply by mentioning that, because this is what is so interesting. I remember I had to do a plenary talk at a conference that was organized by, it was the BAL conference, a British Association of Applied Linguists.
Yeah.
So I had to do a plenary there when it was about what do linguists have to learn about teacher research, or from classroom-based teacher researchers, or something like that. So I asked a question, and I asked them, imagine Peru, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, because I have a lot of data from those areas. Imagine that situation, imagine the context. So I give them a little bit of the setting, of the characteristics. What do you think is the number one researched situation? And interestingly, this was a group of about 60 linguists, and all very well established, highly well-known linguists. And none of them told me what you just said. They said all very interesting things, which were very interesting ideas to research, but none of them mentioned promoting or encouraging students to speak in the classroom, which is the most researched topic by far. So I would say, I don't know, 60%, if not 70% of teachers research that topic. But nobody guessed that. And these are people that research for then later maybe provide implications for practice, recommendations. And so I wasn't expecting that at all, though. And the fact that they didn't know what teachers' interests were just told me a lot about the importance of teacher research.
Yeah.
And the importance of teachers' issues and challenges being accessible to people. I mean, them sharing their perspectives, because then they can just tell linguists or policymakers, curriculum designers, textbook writers, hey, we have a problem here. And this is still a problem, which is promoting speaking in the classroom. You're thinking big classrooms, countries that are mostly monolingual, not having much exposure to English. And so for teachers to promote speaking is very, very difficult. And the same kind of issues repeat again and again. They feel they don't have enough strategies to promote that. They don't know how to provide effective feedback, but there is also students feeling insecure of making mistakes in front of their peers. Lack of exposure to the language, lack of vocabulary to be able to, utter a complete idea. That is the number one challenge and researched topic for teachers.
Right. Interesting. And I think I from what you've just been saying, I think you'd probably agree with me, but it seems that this disconnect between research and practice is still very much apparent in many language classrooms in particular around the world. Is that the case, do you think?
Yeah, that's the case. I know that there is attempts to narrow this gap, but it's not teachers not trying to do enough, or it's not linguists or researchers trying to do more, but they just have different agendas. They have different objectives. Their language is different. So if you think about it, researchers need to publish in a certain article for them to keep their jobs. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And those journals, sometimes their language is completely incomprehensible. And so for them to research things that are of interest for teachers, for a journal may not be of interest. So what do you do in that case? So that's the problem. Their success or their objectives, their targets are different for teachers than for researchers. So it's a very difficult gap to bridge. I know there's been attempts. Probably the best attempt would be always to do research projects in collaboration. However, I'm a bit doubtful whether that partnership it's 100% equal. If they work in collaboration, it's usually the researcher that leads the agenda. And I particularly, what I like about exploratory action research is that it's a kind of a partnership that is pretty much led by the teacher or oriented towards the teacher.
Right, with a focus on what the teachers actually needs to solve in their context.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in a group of 20 teachers, 15 teachers want to research speaking, how to promote speaking. I never say, oh, again, speaking, never, because I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in finding out, discovering something new. And this is when I remember something that I've talked. I had a conversation once with my PhD supervisor when I was a student at the time doing my PhD. And we were talking about the purpose of doing a PhD and whatever. And he said, well, in a PhD, you need to fill a gap in knowledge. That's what he said. Here, you need to fill a gap in knowledge. Therefore, there is something that is not known. You need to provide that new knowledge. So when I think about teacher research, the way I see it, it's you don't need to fill a gap in knowledge in general. You need to fill a gap in your own knowledge. So there is something that they do not know. It may be known by everybody else, but you do not know it. And so that is what you're trying to do. That is what you're trying to answer, that question. I remember a teacher that I work with in Africa, and he was doing a presentation about his exploratory action research. And he was very concerned about managing discipline while doing dialogues, while doing kind of a communicative activity. And the whole class would become chaos. So he developed an action plan based on what he learned about his class. He developed group work activities with clear roles and whatever. And then he realized that everybody was speaking in the classroom at one point, but it wasn't the noise from before. He said this was productive noise.
Productive noise. That's really interesting.
And it was so beautiful because he discovered that. He said it was productive noise. And he said it was such an eureka moment for him. And I'm sure other people would say, of course, when the students are producing language effectively and you give them the right instructions, of course, any noise that they produce is going to be productive. They are communicating, whatever, of course. But for him, this was such a light bulb moment. He discovered something that he did not know. That is the beauty, I think, of teacher research. And this is why sometimes it's not valued enough, that they are not discovering something that doesn't exist. Yes, we know certain things that they discover, but they discover them and they didn't know about them before.
Yes, that's really interesting. I imagine there's probably a lot of very frustrated researchers wondering why teachers aren't adopting some of the research that has been shown to be effective in the classrooms too. But of course, part of the big problem is that teachers don't really have the time or the access to this research, or even if they have the access to the research and the time, it's not accessible enough, perhaps. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on a project on that for years now, years. There are these ideas that I have about, because when you talk about research engagement, you talk about with and to do research and with research. So one is to do research and another one is to read research. The problem is for teachers to read research, they need to be able to have access to it. It needs to be understandable, which usually is not. They need to also to know which kind of research would be in some way relevant for the things that they're interested in. And unfortunately, most of the times it's not. So how do you mediate between, because what you need is mediators. The research, they're doing their thing. They're trying to find new theories and maybe propose new pedagogies, but to an audience that does not understand them. So maybe what we need is more people mediating between the two, somebody that takes the research that they've been carried out and makes it understandable for teachers and sending it to teachers or sharing it with teachers. And this is something that since I've been doing a lot of teacher research, supporting teacher research over the years. Now I'm trying to focus on supporting teachers access research evidence. However, because I don't want to not consider what is relevant to them, there is this work that needs to be done in terms of finding out what is relevant for them, what is it that they want to know that could be useful to them, so that you can work on making it accessible. But the mediation between the research and classroom practice is what a lot of people are working on that right now, but we need a lot more of it.
Yeah. Well, it's very encouraging to hear that is happening, because I think it's much needed, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know a lot of researchers themselves have decided to also act as mediators for their own research or the research of other people. So it's encouraging to know that a lot of that is happening. There are a lot of initiatives right now that are trying to do that. But again, it's not reaching teachers. So I sometimes see examples of things and I'm like, oh, but this is so good. But then it's not reaching teachers. So in a way, what we need to do is not only attempting for the language to be accessible, but also to go where the teachers are. You know what I mean? So if I know that a number of teachers gather and share information in Instagram, so let's go and share information there with them, rather than me creating my own website, because teachers may not access it. So there is also that this about where to provide this information the way teachers can access. I know that the British Council, through their Teaching English site, their Facebook page, they are doing a lot of that, which is good. But again, there's a lot more that can be done to mediate between the two, between research and practice.
Yeah, I think you're right. This idea of we need more people or more organizations to be mediators between teachers and researchers is something that needs more work. It's quite interesting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, Paula, to go back to the exploratory action research, and we talked a little bit about what most, I think you were saying 60-70% of the teachers were looking at how to get their students to speak. What about other research that the teachers were doing in these when they were involved in exploratory action research? What about unusual aspects? Did you ever come across something you thought, well, I've never heard of that before? Something that was a bit unusual or a bit different to what teachers normally look to examine in their classrooms?
Well, the one thing I don't think it's not that they research anything unusual, but what happens is that the exploratory action research encourages them to not only think about problems or puzzles or questions, things that they don't know, but also think about success. And it's interesting that teachers struggle to see success as a starting point for research. I don't blame them, because what you want is try to find an answer for a problem and try to, through research, find a solution for a problem. Because it's really hard for them to think about success as a starting point. I don't know if they don't see the value, they don't see the use, or they cannot come up with anything. But every time I tell them, think about something that you did very well in the classroom and create a question that tries to understand that situation that worked for you so well. They struggle. It's so interesting, but they struggle to see that as a potential starting point of research. Right. I remember a teacher in Colombia who just chose to choose on a situation that it was successful to her. And it was very interesting because she realized that even though the strategy was successful, it wasn't effective from the point of view of language learning, but it was effective from the point of view of classroom management.
That's interesting. So it was helping her with classroom management, but not helping the students improve or practice their language skills. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So she created something that she called the musical pause, I remember. And every time there was something that would happen in the classroom, she would do like a small musical pause and that would bring students back together, improve motivation, get students back on track. It was very positive in many, many ways. But then when she tried to look at the situation from different angles, she realized actually the song that we are singing is not connected to the topic that we are covering. It's not practicing any language area to a degree that is improving learning. And so it kind of gave her the opportunity to start thinking about that strategy, but making it more language oriented, so that not only would improve motivation and help with classroom management, but also be an opportunity to improve language learning.
Wow. Yeah.
But it was interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely something that as teachers develop, I think in my experience, if you're teaching primary students in particular, you're looking for ways of grabbing their attention and keeping them engaged and motivated. And quite often, a lot of the ways that you're able to do that don't really add to them learning any more language, unfortunately. But without those ways of managing the classroom or getting their attention, you can't even start to help them learn.
Yeah, because if you think about it, when you're teaching younger learners, a lot of it is pretty much survival, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, I need to make sure that the class doesn't become a mess, that nobody gets injured, that they are all, their well-being, it's their main thing. So sometimes you just like looking at basics things, and then kind of language learning becomes secondary. So
If I look back to when I was teaching those catering students, with the large class of catering students, very quickly it was apparent that I needed better strategies to actually get their attention and make them and to engage them before I could even start teaching them anything. Because if they weren't paying attention, then they weren't learning. And my experience up until that point of teaching relatively small classes meant that my strategies weren't really working, which makes me think there was probably quite a lot of kind of informal action research going on that I was doing, and that I'm sure that a lot of teachers do it anyway, but without calling action research. But they're trying new things in their classroom, and perhaps one of the things that they would really benefit from is if they were documenting it.
Yeah, exactly.
And looking in a kind of more scientific way for evidence of improvement, rather than just sort of going with their instincts. Do you think?
Yeah. So I remember that when I started teaching about action research, and I kind of explained it like in a nutshell. So basically, when you implement an action, then you evaluate what happens and you reflect on it. Kind of that kind of thing. Well, teachers went, oh, but I do that all the time. So, which
but
is
they're
kind
not
of
formally documenting it
which is
or
kind
trying
of
to look at the evidence and evaluate it. They're just sort of thinking it through in their own heads, I suppose.
Yeah, which is kind of reflective practice in a way. So you're reflecting, and then you try something out, and then you want to see whether that worked or not. And then, but they're doing it informally. They're not recording that information and then looking at it in detail. That is when the research part is missing. And then it's not that I want to tell teachers, oh, but that is not research. It's simply, it's not, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. Reflecting as a teacher and getting into that process of reflective practice is great. It's just that for it to call research, it requires a level of systematicity in terms of how you collect data, and then how you make the analysis of that information and the answers you gather at the end of the process. So that is the main difference. But I'm sure teachers do that on a regular basis. In fact, if our practices of assessment were effective, assessment in itself is like a research process. If you think about it,
Of course,
you assess your students' learning, and then supposedly we are supposed to look at the test, get information about what was right, what was wrong in comparison with this other student, with this other student, with this other student. What is this information from the test telling me? that they are not learning well. And based on that, I'm going to make decisions about my next class or my next module or my next unit. If we did that, then you're kind of engaging in an informal but very analytical process of reflective practice or even early research stages. But we usually don't have the time, I guess, to do that. So that is, again, data that you have that doesn't get analyzed or doesn't inform further actions properly or as much as you could.
Yes, yes. It's a bit like that link between monitoring, evaluation, and learning, Mel, and research. And there is a kind of it's almost like they touch upon each other, but they're kind of different in other ways.
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting that many teachers say, "Oh, but I do this all the time." Yeah, but you the documenting, the more thoughtful, critical analysis, look into the information is what makes it different to your regular practice.
Yeah, yeah. And otherwise, teachers who don't do that, they can be swayed by their opinions or what they think is happening rather than when they actually collect the data, put it down, and then evaluate it calmly later. They may well come to very different opinions about it based on what they can see the evidence being than if you kind of feel your way through if you don't do that.
Yeah, they mention that a lot, actually. A lot of examples mention exactly that. They say things like, I assume that my students were not motivated, but actually they didn't have the vocabulary to be able to speak in class. It wasn't that they didn't want to, it's just that they don't know how, kind of thing. So many teachers approach this from, I think I know the answer, and then it changes as they collect more evidence. So in a way, it teaches them to be careful about assuming things in the classroom. It teaches them to ask students. Many teachers realize that it improves their relationship with the students, the fact that they simply ask them what they think, what do you suggest, or do you see this in this way? It kind of brings them closer because the students get to see that the teacher is trying to do something that involves their voice in the lesson planning process. So there is a lot of what they gain, what they express gaining in the process. What is previously a hunch, now it's more of, no, I know this because I asked them, kind of thing.
Right. Yes. There's that idea of moving away from making assumptions and to actually asking the students about something and documenting responses, because that can be quite surprising. I remember reading some of the case studies that I think were really useful, and we should definitely mention that there are collections of books that you can also freely download from the British Council's Teaching English website, for example, that where teachers have actually documented some of the exploratory action research projects they've done in their classroom. And in some of those, I remember reading about teachers saying that they'd made assumptions that they were surprised when they actually went to collect evidence that their assumptions were not true.
Yeah, that's the main thing that I think helps in the process. It just teaches you that because something happens so frequently in your classroom, it's not always going to have the same answer. Or when some other teacher gives you an idea, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to work in your classroom. So it's great that teachers share ideas and they are in this dialogue of talking about their classroom situations and such. But it doesn't mean that they will know what you need to do, or it doesn't fully even mean that the suggestions that they will give you will work in your context. So one thing that is interesting also, when we, right at the beginning, when we create this idea of dialogue to come up with questions, because of experience, because I've done this so many times, now I tell them, so you're going to have a conversation about a situation. This person is going to explain a situation, and your role as a listener is to listen and ask questions to help this person unpack and explain more the situation. So your role as a listener, again, listen and ask questions to try to understand the situation some more. But immediately after I say that, I need to tell them, but please avoid doing the following: give suggestions, answer the problem, give ideas. Because it's so, I don't know if it's human nature or it's teacher nature. But the moment somebody tells you, oh, my students are really not participating in speaking, immediately the other person goes, oh, have you tried Rookbrook? Have you tried role plays? Or have you tried games?
Yeah.
Immediately.
I think it's only normal. I think that sounds like it's the kind of conversation that takes place in staff rooms. In
Yeah.
particular, when teachers are frustrated, they're coming in from a break. They've got 10 minutes, and they said, I've got this problem," and then a lot of the other teachers will come and say, "Have you tried this? Have you tried this book? I've got a worksheet that might help." Blah blah blah. That's a kind of practical solutions thing that
Yeah.
teachers often get involved in.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, it's great. It's the beauty of working with colleagues and helping each other. However, I am of the idea of taking that and test it and go a bit further and say, okay, that is when you can do action research. Actually, somebody gives you an idea and you can attempt it and then evaluate whether it actually worked or it's actually what your students needed, or have that idea, keep it on the side, explore a little bit more about what is going on and realize whether something like that would be helpful. I am of the idea of always trying to generate this critical mindset of everything that we share. I think that is only going to make us better teachers than if we just take whatever solution or suggestion is provided to us. We always need to be thinking of, okay, does that fit with my reality? Is that something that might help my students? Are my students able to do that? Or does it match with their needs and their interests? I usually propose teachers being more critical, autonomous in their decision making, use their colleagues as support, as guidance in their thinking process. But I think it will be, well, based on what teachers have said in my number of years working on this, that they see a lot of benefit of them discovering the source of the problem by themselves as well.
Oh yeah, I think it's more valuable, isn't it? It's the same with learners when they have aha moments about a particular piece of language, or it becomes more valuable to them than if there's just sort of being told something and they try and take it in. I think
Exactly. It's memorable. It's just memorable. And you are just, oh, wow, I found out this, and now I'm not going to forget it. I'm going to keep it in mind, so that every time I teach a speaking lesson, I need to provide, the one thing that they keep mentioning is the need to provide a lot of language support before any speaking lesson, which is, again, something that we all know. But there is a moment when you forget. And because you did the research and you realize the importance of it, now you won't forget it again.
Yeah, it's that. It's more memorable. It's information that you've earned, if you like, if you've gone through a process and discovered it for yourself, rather than someone's just told you it. And you
exactly.
think,
nobody told you. I found that out myself. So that is what I'm going to stick to from now onwards. I think it's the best way. That is why, in a way, all these books, a number of books, talk about teacher research being so valuable is because we know that the change that it causes is so transformative that in a way we know that nothing is going to make you change your practices more dramatically than something that you discover. So that is the main reason why teacher research has so many advocates. It simply causes such change in your way of thinking, the discovery of your ways of teaching, understand your learners better, that it's such a transformational change in your practice that is why it's so favorable for teachers.
Yeah, it's when you have those aha moments, whatever they are, if they come through research or just by observation of the learners in the classrooms, they're the most valuable things or the most memorable moments. I think I can think of a few myself. I'm sure you can too, and you never forget them.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, colleagues can help, but even when colleagues helping you, but if it's something that you realize by yourself, it just has a different kind of impact. And yes, I know it's challenging to do. I know it may take time, but maybe the one thing that I've also noticed is that it's very difficult when you do it for the first time, because it's like when you're teaching for the very first time. It's difficult. You don't know how to move, what to say, how to elicit information, how to ask the right question. In research, it's the same. But if you do it again and you do it again and you do it again, you realize that you learn more or less the procedure and you get used to the process, the little tasks that are involved or embedded in the process. They come to you more easily. So it is challenging, yes, but I would say it happens right at the beginning. Then later on, some teachers have told me that they develop this new way of thinking. It's like they are doing research on a regular basis kind of way. Sometimes they record information, but not in the amounts of when they were doing the program with us, but they do record information and they make decisions. So for some of them, it kind of becomes a new way of teaching by collecting evidence in a way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The fact that it can be a transformative experience and change the way how you approach your classroom practice. I think I would doubt whether anyone who hasn't been through this type of exploratory action research program and not changed the way they approach teaching because of it. I think that's one of the most important things about doing it, really.
Yeah, they also learn about research. I mean, there is also
it demystifies research, doesn't it?
Yeah, they do think it's difficult from the point of view of the thinking process, that they have to you need to think very hard about the question, that you need to think very hard about how you're going to design your tools so that you get the right information, that you analyze the answers that you got very carefully so that you are making the right interpretation of the data. That is a challenge. The thinking, it's so profound that takes time to get into that mindset. However, there is also this realization that I can do it. Actually, I don't need to write a paper in a journal as a final product. I don't need to use academic jargon to do it. I don't need to read a bunch of books and write a theoretical framework about it. So it just demystifies the whole concept that people have of research, and it makes them think that there are different. It's just there are different kinds. So research needs to be understood in a continuum rather than just one single way of doing it, just a one single thing. And I think the teachers that I've worked with have also managed to understand that.
Yeah, definitely. So, Paula, just winding things up now, I'd love to hear about what your future plans and projects are, what's coming up on the agenda that you're excited about.
Well, I'm going to continue working for these teachers in Georgia. It's a project that I am very much committed to. We are, for the first time, we are going to start a mentoring program of exploratory action research with the subject teachers. So these are not only English teachers, they are teachers of other subjects who will be speaking in Georgian. So
how is your Georgian?
Oh, getting better. No, I can barely say thank you and hello. At least I learned those words. But the main thing is having selected a good number of mentors. So this is one of the things that you need to be concerned about when you develop projects of this nature. You need to try to make sure that you develop local expertise so that programs like this are self-sustained to a degree. So a number of the teachers that did the project in Georgia are now going to act as mentors for their peers at school. So there are going to be school-based projects in Georgia where they are going to act mentors to their peers that are not going to be English teachers. So it's going to be the first time that we try something like this. It's quite challenging, but we are monitoring it closely. We are starting that in September. So we are very much excited about that. Then another project potentially starting in Kazakhstan with the online component. I design an online course about exploratory action research, which is part of the British Council now online courses. And so that is going to be provided to teachers in Kazakhstan. And then my pending project for years now, which I'm probably going to develop at some point, has to do with engagement with research. So trying to bring teachers closer to research data, to research findings. But that is a personal project that I'm still working on.
And that's something that you think you'll be able to bring forward in the next year or so?
That's my plan. So the only problem is, again, the problem that everybody that is working on projects of this nature with teachers is, how do I reach teachers? How do I make sure they are able to access this information that is clear to them, that is relevant for them? So I'm in the process of planning a group of teachers that could act as consultants for this, because if I don't hear the voice of teachers about what kind of research evidence is interesting for them, again, it's another top-down project that is not going to have any impact. So I am really committed to try to, since I've been working with teacher research for such a long time now I would like to pay attention to how do I bring teachers closer to research by doing some kind of mediation between research findings and their practice. But I want to be very careful about doing it, again, at their level, at language that is interesting to them, of topics that are interesting to them, and ideally promoting critical thinking rather than telling, which is something that I'm extremely careful of. I just don't want to tell teachers to read about something. I just want it to be an invitation for them to decide whether that is something of use to them.
Yes, I understand from everything you've talked about today about why you would want that and why it's the best way to go about it. So that's really good. Paula, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great pleasure talking to you and listening in more detail to all of this. I'm sure all of the listeners, the teachers listening out there, will much appreciate and learn from this. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you again very much for the invitation. Thank you, everybody.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org. Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalized social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Watch sessions by thought leaders in education, literacy experts, and EdTech specialists from the International Reading Conference for free. The lineup included renowned speakers such as TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui and beloved children's author Michael Rosen. The three-day conference explored a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Sign up to receive the recordings for free by visiting the Reading Solutions UK website at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Thanks so much to Paula Rebellero for her time. I hope you found that as interesting as I did. While we were talking, I remembered when I had the opportunity to meet the teachers, and Paula, of course, involved in the Champion Teachers Project, which Paula mentioned, and which was led by her and Richard Smith from the UK, and which took place in Chile, Peru, Mexico, Uruguay, and briefly Colombia. And I was actively involved when it took place in Uruguay and had the pleasure of attending the final presentations of the group of teachers in Mexico City. And was also able to be at the closing ceremony of a much larger event celebrating the Champion Teachers Project, where a very large number of teachers presented their research. And that was one thing I very much enjoyed about this. At the end of their research cycle, teachers summarize what they discovered, usually in the format of a poster, and they have the opportunity to present their findings to other teachers who are able to ask them more information about their projects, etc. And apart from the research, which is valuable in its own right, I think that opportunity to present to other teachers and share their findings always seemed so empowering to me. And I know some of the teachers involved in this project went on to present their findings at high-profile conferences, for example. So if you're interested in getting involved in something similar, then do remember what Paula said about the Handbook for Exploratory Action Research, which is available to download for free from the British Council's Teaching English website. There are also lots of other publications that compile research projects and posters of some of the teachers involved in exploratory action research. If you just search, you'll find them. And they're worth looking at because they give you an idea of how those teachers went about their research and what they found out. So that brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks to all who joined live during our discussion, and thanks also to those of you who are listening back to the recordings and made it to the end. Something I've been looking at recently for my job is how to encourage teachers to listen to recordings of CPD webinars produced and made available for them. Strangely, most people just watch around 5 to 10 minutes of recordings, and that can be puzzling for us to understand why that is. My best guess is that most teachers are too busy and they're interested by the content. So they open the recordings of the webinars, but then they're drawn away by the things that are happening in their lives and so abandon the recordings. I'm sure most of them have the intention of going back later to watch the whole thing, but we all know what happens when it comes to good intentions. And I know that is definitely the case for me, so I imagine it is often so with others. So I think one of the advantages that audio has over video for CPD is that you can do other things when listening. I know that to be the case when it comes to me. I find it difficult to sit down and watch 45 minutes, 60 minutes of a webinar, but I do listen to podcasts when I'm cooking, for instance, and that 40 to 60 minutes is probably a good time. This show, of course, exceeds 60 minutes, but I like to think that that gives me ample time to explore a topic in more detail with a guest. And when I was doing the 1 hour shows on Teachers Talk Radio, I often found that we were just getting warmed up and then I had to bring things to a close. So if you are still listening, congratulations. You are part of a small but dedicated group of teaching professionals, and I appreciate it. So bye for now, folks. Remember, there are Teachers Talk Radio shows all week on all manner of interesting topics, with a large variety of guests, so please check those out.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.